This map shows the Pacific Theater in the summer of 1942. The Japanese Empire had expanded relentlessly across the ocean, and their engineers were carving out a brand new airfield on a remote island in the Solomons called Guadalcanal. By placing bombers on that airstrip, Japanese forces would be within striking distance of the main shipping lanes between the United States and Australia. If those routes were severed, the Allies would struggle to supply the Pacific Theater. To stop that from happening, American commanders decided to strike first. On August 7, 1942, U.S. Marines waded ashore, launching the first major Allied land offensive of the war. They faced almost no resistance on the beach. Within hours, the Marines overran the construction site and captured the dirt runway, renaming it Henderson Field. But the Japanese military immediately struck back. Under the cover of darkness, a Japanese naval force ambushed the Allied fleet supporting the landing. In the resulting action off Savo Island, 4 Allied cruisers were sunk, marking one of the worst defeats in U.S. Navy history. The surviving transport ships were forced to retreat to open water immediately. When they sailed away, they took nearly all the food, ammunition, and heavy equipment the Marines had brought with them. In a matter of days, the dynamic on the ground completely inverted. An offensive invasion had morphed into a desperate defensive trap, with the Marines stranded on a hostile island, surrounded by an enemy eager to take the airfield back. For the next several months, the battle settled into a strange, grinding rhythm, where control of the island literally shifted with the setting of the sun. During the day, the Americans held the advantage. Combat aircraft taking off from Henderson Field controlled the sky, spotting and bombing any Japanese ships attempting to approach the coast. But at night, American planes couldn't fly. The Imperial Japanese Navy used that darkness to run heavily armed fast destroyers, a supply chain nicknamed the Tokyo Express, to smuggle fresh troops and artillery onto the island. For the Marines dug into the perimeter, daylight offered little relief. They were fighting in stifling heat and chest-deep swamps, battling widespread outbreaks of malaria and severe malnutrition. And when the sun went down, those same exhausted soldiers had to repel waves of Japanese infantry charging out of the jungle. In one nearly disastrous attack at Edson's Ridge, the defensive lines came dangerously close to breaking, which would have allowed the Japanese to overrun the airfield entirely. It was a dual siege. The Japanese were trying to starve out the Marines, while American planes bombed Japanese supply lines to starve the attackers. Both armies were burning through men and material in a brutal race to see who would collapse first. As the stalemate dragged on, commanders on both sides realized that whoever controlled the water would eventually control the island. They began pouring vast numbers of aircraft and warships into the narrow straits off the coast. The resulting clashes were so violent that the stretch of water became littered with the wreckage of dozens of sunken vessels, permanently earning it the name Iron Bottom Sound. The naval conflict reached its peak in mid-November 1942. During the naval battle of Guadalcanal, colossal fleets finally clashed directly in the dark, exchanging point-blank artillery fire. When the smoke cleared, the U.S. Navy had crippled Japan's ability to reinforce the island, sinking critical battleships and heavily loaded troop transports. Without those ships, the thousands of Japanese soldiers trapped in the jungle were completely cut off. Their food ran out, disease ravaged their ranks, and they lost the physical strength to mount any further offensives. Breaking the stalemate on the dirt runway ultimately required achieving outright naval supremacy miles off the coast. By December 1942, the Japanese High Command quietly accepted that Guadalcanal could not be retaken. They initiated a highly secretive operation to pull their surviving forces out. Over several nights in February 1943, under total darkness, they evacuated thousands of soldiers. The withdrawal was executed so effectively that American forces didn't even realize the enemy had abandoned their positions until the retreat was mostly complete. The victory came at a massive cost. U.S. forces suffered heavy casualties, and the Marines who survived 6 months of constant jungle warfare were left physically and psychologically battered. But the Japanese military lost tens of thousands of elite soldiers. Along with those men, they lost veteran pilots and crucial warships that their industrial base simply could not replace. Before this campaign, the Japanese army had swept across the Pacific with very few checks to their momentum. Guadalcanal proved that American forces could adapt to brutal, attritional warfare and hold their ground. By securing this remote, disease-ridden island, the Allies had finally halted the Japanese advance. They now had the vital forward base they needed to launch an agonizing, multi-year island-hopping campaign that would lead straight to Tokyo.